Has anyone noticed this disturbing trend of using trauma as a marketing tactic? In today's video, I want to talk about trauma copycats and this weird new trend that everyone seems to be doing. I hope you enjoy the video.
Haley Bailey woke up and decided that this week she will be capitalizing off of exploiting women's trauma.
So recently on TikTok and Instagram Reels, a lot of creators have been found to be faking stories. And then you also have celebrities like Blake Lively not taking issues seriously with the proper tone and causing a PR disaster.
I actually didn't know the book, which I feel like I live under a rock.
This is interesting to me because it seems like a relatively new thing that I think is going to get worse over time. You might be thinking, oh wow, this is nothing new, it's happened before, but I disagree. Sure, creators have embellished their stories or hyped them up to make them more entertaining and to increase their virality. I mean, I've even done it for a meme or two, but there's a big, vast difference between hyping up a story and making it more entertaining and strictly flat out lying. And then even above that, there's a difference of faking your entire story to get trauma and sympathy points to push your brand or to push a marketing service. Like for example, those random street interviews where they randomly find a celebrity and it always happens to be right when the celebrity is doing a big marketing push and, oh, I just happened upon you in the New York City streets. Like those are obviously fake and marketing, and that's like fine, like get it. There's a difference between that and pretending that you've been stalked so you can sell a teddy bear. And even when it comes to comedy skits, I've changed a few stories about it, but I've never outright lied and tried to make it seem more bad than it is just for the views. That would be kind of weird, right?
Right.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
But trauma copycats don't really care about the morals of the situation. They'll pretend to be stalked. They'll pretend that their husband is currently going through psychosis. They'll pretend that they've been in a horrible relationship with a billionaire if it fits the trend, if it's well for their marketing, if it fits well for their brand.
Allegedly lying about her billionaire boyfriend. Basically, the premise of her story is that she dated a billionaire, and there was like an NDA, so while they were dating, she apparently couldn't say anything about it, but now that they broke up, she could. But after she released this story, a lot of people did some digging on like the details of the story, and her story just doesn't add up at all.
I don't usually talk about my real life on here, just because I do like comedy sketches and like satirical content. But I think I've decided that I want to. When I first started doing TikTok, I really wanted it to be like an SNL type thing where I made sketches and where I made like little videos, but nothing had to do with my real life. But it's been about 2 years of doing this full time, and I think I'm finally ready to show you guys like who I actually am. The
flightless bird situation is a good example of this and a good starting point. She deleted all the videos and wiped her account from the face of Earth, so I can't really show you everything and all the comments and everybody believing her.
Something's happened to her husband. He started saying crazy stuff. Everybody's concerned for the children. It's so crazy, y'all, and it's like so emotional the way it's like happening in real time, as there's like intense sense of danger within the story, and like everybody, including myself, was very worried about this woman. I don't even know what her name is, okay? It might be Birdie. I don't know if she even has a real family at this point. She even did like a get ready with me while I tell you about the update on what's going on. And I think at that point, I was kind of like, something wasn't right. It was very triggering for people who have been in this same mental health crisis before. I feel like I was just like very concerned and worried about this lady and her family. It was just like a genuine concern, just wanting a good outcome for this family. So last night, I think it was last night, I just saw it today, she posts a video, a TikTok, saying that this was a real story that happened back in January, even though she's been telling it as real time this entire time. Like, it's like intense. But she goes on to say that she's a storyteller. She's into performance art, and she's a theater kid, and she wanted this to be an immersive experience for everyone who was listening. I'm sorry, what? Now anyone who comes to this app in the same crisis that you were in back in January, nobody's going to believe them.
If you want the full story, you can go over to Austin Green's channel and he has all of the videos together in one place. For the flightless bird situation, people were literally upset at work. They couldn't sleep. They were constantly thinking about her and her family, but they never really knew these people. They were just taking on good word that she was going through something, and they felt a way about it. Like they had a parasocial relationship with that family.
People are upset at her in the first place shows that they have a lack of social media literacy and they develop parasocial relationships too quickly, and it's concerning. It's concerning that people are.
When we talk about parasocial relationships, we only really talk about it in the context of somebody imagining you have a friendship with the creator, but that's not the definition of a parasocial relationship. Parasocial relationship is any connection you have with somebody that you do not know personally. Losing sleep, caring about another person when you don't even know them is parasocial. The reason that that's important is because none of these stories would work unless there was a parasocial relationship with there. You wouldn't trust a random person that just comes onto your screen that you have no idea who they are if they started telling you about how their toxic ex-boyfriend was actually a billionaire this entire time and blah, blah, blah. You wouldn't trust that person. You don't know them. You don't know their real life, but you do trust them because you have a parasocial relationship with them. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. That's just being a human. We care for people even if we don't directly know them. Like when somebody with cancer goes viral on TikTok or whatever and you donate money to them, that's a parasocial relationship. You don't know them. You don't know if they actually have cancer. And that's not a bad thing, you donating to them, but it is a parasocial relationship. And I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. We're human after all. Trusting each other, even if we don't directly know each other, is a human emotion that we've been taught to have.
That these people need to get a handle on themselves who were saying they were unable to sleep at night because they were worried about their kid, like the kids and Flightless Bird. They weren't just worried about Flightless Bird and her kids. They obviously were worried about them. But what was happening is they had an emotional flashback where they then also were brought back to the time that they went through this and they felt unsafe.
But creators get greedy where they want both things. On one hand, they want to say that they don't have a parasocial relationship with their fan base or that they hate parasociality. And on the other hand, they want to reap all the benefits of a parasocial relationship, trusting and attention. And that's why I always talk about parasocial relationships, because people try to say that they don't have one, but it's kind of inherent in the audience creator dynamic that you're bound to have one. And you should be honest to it and open with it, and you should treat that with incredible responsibility. For example, Hailey Bailey and that girl who lied on Instagram about being stalked, their stories only worked because a lot of their audience is women and women want to trust other women. And that gets into why it's such a bad thing, because when you get rid of parasocial relationships, what replaces it is not just a normal, I don't care about this. What replaces it is nihilism, a low trust society, people not just believing your story. It's also them going through your story and trying to discredit you because they're so used to creators coming onto platforms and lying for views, attention, and marketing.
He is losing sleep over this woman who's being so vulnerable with all of us. But then I watched a few more videos and it felt, I'll be honest, like a little theatrical. There were some red flags and I had like a little nagging feeling. Do y'all remember that girl who faked being Amish a while back, Sarah Joy? I just had a similar feeling watching TikTok. How earnestly folks, especially other women, want to believe the content that they're seeing. And I'm in no way scolding folks who are not skeptical. It's a really good thing to want to trust other people. When folks break our trust, that's on them, not on us. But I have learned very quickly how we need a higher level of discernment about how folks use social media for attention, for clout, for profit.
And this is why the trend is so bad, because it normalizes questioning survivors. It normalizes being highly critical of women who come forward, and it normalizes everybody trying to be a detective on the internet. For the Hailey Bailey situation, the only reason that it was found out is because somebody lived in her town and was like, hey, here's the receipts on it. If it wasn't for her going through a timeline of her life, getting the screenshots and the videos that she posted at that time, really doing due diligence on her life, Hailey Bailey would have just rode the trend, made a lot of money, and then been happily ever after, allegedly. But imagine if Hailey Bailey's story was true, allegedly, and she really did have a billionaire boyfriend. Could you imagine how traumatic that would be for a real victim? Could you imagine the stress that a person who really went through that has to feel? Imagine like millions of people going through your life trying to find inaccuracies to discredit you. And even if you disagree that will happen, that it's normalizing people discrediting real people who go through these stories, you have to also realize that making it a joke ruins the tone of the situation. It ruins the seriousness of the situation. It kind of normalizes it in a way. The Instagram Reels creator, for example, where she was acting like it's funny, like it's not a serious thing. If you've ever had a stalker, because I've had one, it is not a good time. It is fearful. It causes a lot of anxiety. It causes a lot of stress, but you're downplaying it and you're not normalizing it. If you realize in the beginning of the video, I normally say, blah, 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 and make some jokes along the way. I hope you enjoyed the video. I don't do that with these serious videos because there's a time and a place for the tone. I take it seriously because the meme that always plays in my head, this is kind of a joke, but it's important. The meme that always plays in my head is like, imagine you die and then people are talking about your death. People are talking about your death on on a true crime podcast with tea and biscuits and calling their fan base my detectives. Like, it would be so cringe. Like, I would roll in my grave. But that's my point. Like, you have to treat it seriously. You have to treat it with the tone that it expects. But they don't think of, these content creators don't think of it as that way. It's just content to them. It's just a way to get views, to get to money. And that goes back to the Blake Lively situation where she was using a serious topic to push her brand because, again, goes back to what I said earlier, the parasocial relationship of it. Trust is another word for attention. If you trust me, you'll click on my video. If you trust me, you'll pay attention. You see what I'm saying? Women's trauma is more of a content house nowadays. Like, if you get online, any TikToker will know this, and you like say like, oh, my ex-boyfriend did this, and this will go viral, because a lot of women feel that way, and it feels cathartic to hear other women talk about it and all of this other things. So these creators play into that. That's also why a lot of the true crime stuff is big. So creators like Blake Lively, they see the market and they see it as a way, not because they care about the stories, not because they care about pushing a narrative of believing women or having a space where they can tell their stories. It's not about that at all. It's about, how can I make this video to get attention to sell my product? And I think that's going to become more and more normalized as people devalue the seriousness of these issues, because it just becomes a content mill for them. It just becomes another way to get eyeballs on your marketing tactics, to get eyeballs on the product that you want to sell. They don't really care about it. I personally, I'm going to get a little hate for this. I don't think any of the women I talked about here really care about those issues. I think that they're just playing on the bond that a lot of women have with each other, where they want to believe each other, and they know that that's a good, cheap way to clock in and to get attention. And that's the most valuable thing in this economy, the attention economy.
So disappointing that a book that meant so much to so many women is essentially completely ruined by Blake Lively and her one-dimensional actress mentality. I can't. I can't. She didn't know the book. She didn't know the story. She didn't know how to embody every emotion and the spirit and soul of the gravity of someone who goes through this. Flop.
But that ruins the fabric of trust in our society. Like, there's only so many times an influencer can get on here and totally make up a fake story for a skit or whatever before the audience just checks out and just, I don't care, all influencers are liars. And then it ruins it for the person who actually has something happen. And because it's so hard to get attention nowadays, everybody wants to be a creator, nobody wants to be a viewer, so it's oversaturated. You have to find a way to get eyeballs, to get attention on your products. Trauma is one of the last things that hasn't been commodified. Trauma it's one of the last bastions of parasociality or parasocial relationships, whatever you want to call, where we don't really question people unless like you're a man and you want to question if a woman's lying or not. But normally, if somebody comes online and they're like, oh my God, I'm losing my house because of the storm, you know, we all want to help them. That is a human nature to want to help each other. Teresa, I think, did that series, and so many other people copied it, and they used their original story, sure, but it was a successful thing because there were a lot of trust. Like, people don't sit and watch a 30-part series or however long it was unless they have some kind of trust in you as a creator, that you're being honest and that your story is real and that you're being truthful, even though realistically they have no reason to think that you're telling the truth. And that goes back to why it's so bad, because it normalizes detective work. They found her ex-husband and could have put her in a really serious situation. But again, that has become normalized because so many creators have lied about traumatic stories to get clout, to get fame and attention. Like, I'm no fan of Brooke Schofield, but at least she didn't lie and make things up. At least she didn't make up an entire story just for views. Like, sure, she wanted views on it. That's why she formatted it the way that she did, because she knew that the trend was already popular, but it was all true. And her ex wanted to say that she was doing it for attention, and that might be true. And she's allowed to do that. She's allowed to use her past and all the stuff she went through for views, for content, because it actually happened to her, but she never embellished the story. Everything she said was factual. And she got really famous off of it, so much so that she later got canceled, but I'm not going to make a joke about that because of the tone. So when these trauma copycats like Haley Bailey see this, they can't help themselves. They see the clout. They just want to have it. And it's not just a woman thing. A lot of men who are creators do this too. Just nobody really cares. And I think that's the difference between guys. I know like a lot of guys get on here on YouTube, on TikTok, and make up fake stories about like women doing them wrong or whatever, but nobody really cares. Everybody like kind of knows that it's fake. It is what it is. I think women have a lot more parasocial relationship with their fan base than men do. I think with men, it's mostly transactional. For example, men don't have fan bases like the Barbs, Cardi Stans, the Beehive, Taylor Swifties. Like there's plenty of examples of this. I don't think I really have to go through it, but there's not like a male equivalent to that. So as a man, when I listen to another male creator and he's like saying something I'm pretty sure is false, if you're a male creator with a mostly male audience, there's kind of really no bar. A lot of men don't really care if they're an audience. They're just like, get your bag or whatever. There's a lot of men who have terrible sponsorships for their audiences and treat their audiences horribly, but they never get called out on it. And the audience doesn't seem to really care because it's mostly transactional. It's not parasocial. It's like, again, the nihilism, antitrust behavior. Like they kind of expect the influencer to be a horrible person. For example, like this is like a whole thing. There have been men who lied about being in a toxic relationship, who've never gotten called out, who nobody really cares. But then Haley Bailey gets called out and people go through her life story and they question it. And there's a lot of factors that play in here, like women not being believed in general. So people go through their stuff. Like that's too advanced for this video, but like there's just a difference. And that's where I wanted to end with, that there's a difference. Anyway, I hope you enjoy the video. Click here for the next one. Have a great day. Peace.